Social Studies 20-2, source number 2 of our look at foreign policy. Give you a few seconds to study the cartoon, then we will get into it. All right, so it's actually a piece of propaganda. As we've learned, propaganda is a one-sided government message. So when you feed people propaganda, you're trying to indoctrinate them, make them think what you want them to think. And that's what we see here. So this would be a poster seen in Japan during the 1930s. We know it's Japan. You know, that's the Japanese flag right there. I can't read Japanese, but I could pretty good idea what they might be saying. Move forward, Japan, the world is yours, something to that effect. We don't really need to know what the poster's saying. I think it's more the message that the poster stands for above all else that we're looking for. So we've got a poster depicting Japanese military conquering. And so if we study it more closely, you can see the soldier staring out of the tank, looking ahead with determination. The tank is firing its main cannon, its machine gun, coupled by another tank in the background. We could assume there would be other tanks in the background. And it's what I find interesting. It's rolling over a barbed wire fence, so it's trying to show um, Japanese mobility, Japanese expansionism, Japanese progress. At the hands of war and conflict. So what we're getting at, I guess, it's taking a look at Japanese interwar foreign policy of expansionism. As we learned, Japan was in need of resources. It wanted to continue to industrialize. So Japan conducted a campaign of expansionism called the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, in which they would liberate European colonies in Asia, and Japan would keep those colonies for themselves. And so we studied this actually last week. You can see the extent of the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. Um, Here's Japan here, but all of the countries in red are countries that Japan expanded to. And that could be indicated. That might be something you talk about when you look at the propaganda poster. The soil that is being conquered in the poster could be China, could be Korea, could be French Indochina, could be New Guinea, the Philippines, and so on. You wouldn't list them all, but you would list two or three areas in which Japan expanded to during their era of expansionism in the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. We talk specifically about Manchuria, and you might even touch on these things down toward the bottom. You might talk about how the League of Nations failed to stop Japan and their expansionist policies of the 1930s. Certainly, you could bring that into this propaganda piece as well. And you might even talk about, look, it wasn't just Japan doing this. I mean, Germany was expanding, Italy was expanding, um, but probably you want to target Japan for sure when you interpret this source. So in terms of our theme, we've got foreign policy down here. This is source number 2. Date, place would be the 1930s. And as we talked about, it could be China. It could be the Philippines, any place that Japan expanded to. List two or three, that would be good enough. Your participants would be, Japan, the Japanese military specifically. Evidence would be the things that we talked about, the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, the tanks, the Japanese flag signifying who that is. And I think you'd want to point out that barbed wire. That shows me that Japan is the aggressor in this battle. Japan is rolling over someone else's defenses. Where am I here? Historical case study again is Japanese expansionism. Connection to nationalism, well, for sure, we're going to establish expansionism, obviously. I would be putting ethnocentrism in there. You're doing this because you believe that you're superior, that it is your duty to do this to other societies. You might talk about indoctrination and the fact that Japan had indoctrinated its population to think this. For sure, foreign policy, and again, it's an example of ultranationalism and the expense of ultranationalism leading to war and conflict. Finally, perspectives, I would establish two, maybe even three. Number one, obviously, is going to be the Japanese perspective. What's that soldier thinking? What does he think about this? He's probably ethnocentric because of indoctrination. Judging from the look on his face, he has no guilt over what he's doing, no remorse. It's his duty to do this. Other perspective I might target would be, um, what about the victims of Japanese expansionism? Like how would China have reacted? How would have Korea reacted to Japanese expansionism? How would they have seen it? How would they have looked at it? Speculate on that. And finally, maybe a third perspective, I might go after the League of Nations. What does the League of Nations think about this? What are their thoughts regarding this? How would they respond? How would they react? And I think that's as far as I would take my perspectives. So there you go. Nice job with that source.